come up with a lot more money than they were expecting to give to the church's annual stewardship budget. He hatched a pretty intricate plan with his music people for the following Sunday, asking them to provide some really peaceful background music as he made his appeal, making it easier for his flock to concentrate on how much the Lord was telling them to give. Unfortunately, his plan hit the fan early that Sunday morning when the regular organist fell ill, and a substitute had to be brought in at the very last minute. The substitute wanted to know what to play. "Here's a copy of the service," Sebastian said, rather glumly and impatiently. "Just figure out something to play after I make the announcement about the finances." He knew his monetary mission was dead in the water. Near the end of the service, Sebastian paused and he said, "Brothers and sisters, we are in great difficulty. Maintenance and staffing cost twice as much as expected. We need $14,000 more. Any of you who can pledge $100 extra or more a month, please stand up." He cut his eyes towards the organ, and at that moment the substitute organist winked at him and began to play the Star-Spangled Banner, which brought everybody to their feet. And that, my friends, is how the substitute organist became the regular organist at Sebastian Smith's church. Before we go any further, let me assure you, Emma is not going to play the Star-Spangled Banner this morning, nor will I be reaching for your wallet as I preach, although I'm tempted. The truth is, I have much bigger fish to fry. Your money, while important, is in the larger scheme of things inconsequential. What I'm after this morning is you. I want you to travel in your mind with me to the 6th chapter of both John's and Mark's gospel, where Jesus ventures to the east side of the Sea of Galilee. A huge crowd, over 5,000 strong, in search of healing, in search of hope, follows him there, and they wind up stranded without having packed anything to eat. Now, John's gospel tells us a little boy is willing to part with his 5 barley loaves and his 2 fish in order to help feed the masses, and piece after piece is broken off until all 5,000 people are fed. Now, the preaching point of John 6 is simple, but it is powerful. The size of the gift doesn't matter nearly as much as the size of the God, which makes for a good sermon. God invites us. God expects us to give sacrificially of what we have. After all, God is in the business of transforming ordinary gifts into extraordinary provisions. In Mark's gospel, which I just read, however, in tremendous contrast with John's gospel, when the disciples state the obvious, "Hey, man, the crowd is hungry and there's no food," Jesus pointedly deflects the request back at the disciples. "All right, then you give them something to eat." In other words, Jesus says, "I can help these people, but only if you help me." Which is, I think, exactly what God is saying to us today. I can touch people in new ways through community church, but I need your help. I need the 5 loaves and the 2 fish that only you can bring. That's why I chose the sermon title I did for today. 5, 2, and you is the formula for sacrificial Christian giving. It's the formula for the giving of your money. It's the formula for the giving of your time. What God needs to change the world is you, your 5 loaves, and your 2 fish. He can take a couple of fish and a couple of loaves and feed 5,000 people. He can take a widow's mite, her tiny, tiny offering, and turn it into a story that inspires people to give for thousands of years. He can take 12 bumbling disciples and turn the world upside down. And now it is our turn to join that endless line of splendor of 5, to, and you. It was early spring of 1886 in Philadelphia. A little girl named Hattie Mae Wyatt stood near a small church she'd been turned away from because it was too crowded. "I can't go to Sunday school," she sobbed to the pastor as he walked by. The pastor very kindly took her by the hand and found a place for her in the Sunday school class. The little girl went to bed that night happy that they found room for her, but very worried about those children for whom there was no room at the inn. A couple of weeks later, Hattie Mae Wyatt lay dead, the victim of a childhood disease, at a time when medical help in Philadelphia was scarce. At her funeral, Hattie's father pulled the minister, Dr. Russell Conwell, aside, and he told him that Hattie Mae had been doing errands around the house to earn money so the church could build a building large enough to accommodate all the children who wanted to come to Sunday school. Hattie Mae's father handed Russell Conwell an envelope filled with the money that she had saved, 57 pennies. Russell Conwell goes on to say this: "At the next meeting of the church trustees, I told of this gift of 57 cents, the first gift towards the proposed building fund of the new church. Until then, the matter had been barely spoken of. A new church was simply a distant dream for the future. The trustees seemed impressed," he said, "and in a few days, one of them came to me and asked me to talk to the man who owned the property right next door. I told him of the beginning of this fund, a little gift from a little girl. He wasn't a churchgoer at all, but he listened attentively to my tale, and he said he was quite ready to sell us the land for $10,000, and he would take a down payment of just 57 cents. The next time you're in Philadelphia, look up Grace Temple Baptist Church. Be sure to visit, a block away from it, Temple University, where thousands of students are educated. Have a look, too, at Temple University Hospital and at a Sunday school building that housed hundreds of beautiful children, built so that no child need ever be left outside during Sunday school time again. When you look at all those buildings, think of Hattie Mae Wyatt, whose 57 cents, so sacrificially saved, so freely given, impacted her community and her world in such powerful ways. It goes to show you what God can do with 57 cents. Hattie Mae's version of 5 loaves and 2 fish. The Spirit says to us now what the Spirit said then and what the Spirit has said throughout history. The answer to the world's challenges lies in your hands. It's the spiritual principle of 5, 2, and you. Sister Mary Rose McGrady spent most of her adult ministry working at a place called Covenant House, a halfway house for runaway girls in New York City. Early in her ministry, after a particularly rough day, Mary Rose was just railing at God in her prayers. Every place I turn, I see people in need. Everywhere I go, I see people who hurt. On the street just now, I saw a small girl shivering next to a building with little hope of her next meal. Why do you permit this? Why don't you do something about it? For a while, she said, God just said nothing. And then he whispered in my ear, I did do something about it. I made you. Mary Rose had to be reminded, the only way the world changes is if you get serious about 5, 2, and you. In her best-selling book, Traveling Mercies, my girl Anne Lamott writes this: I came back to live in San Francisco in 1982. I was 28. My life was a mess. I took a sleeping pill with my last glass of scotch every night. Then I woke up late, wrote for a couple hours, walked back to the liquor store to buy another pint. My life was utterly schizophrenic. I often seemed cheerful, but fear just pulsed inside of me. I was broke, I was drunk, I was bulimic. I was cracking up, but I wasn't remotely ready for Christianity. I wasn't that far gone. A year later, I found myself pregnant, unmarried, still drinking, and at the end of my rope. Across the street from the little flea market I frequented, there was a little church, St. Andrew's Presbyterian, that had the prettiest music wafting out their windows on Sunday mornings. I began stopping in the doorway from time to time just to listen to the songs. They had a choir of 5 black women and one rather Amish-looking white guy making glorious noise, and a congregation of about 30 people, radiating kindness and warmth. So one Sunday, a month and a half into my pregnancy, I went into my first worship service there, and I was surrounded by love. 2 weeks later, I announced during worship I was pregnant. All these old people raised in Bible-thumping homes in the Deep South stood up and clapped. Almost immediately, they set about providing for me and my unborn child. They bought clothes, they brought me casseroles, they brought me assurance this baby was going to be part of a family. And they began stealthily slipping me money. Most of the women at St. Andrews live pretty close to the bone financially. They exist on small Social Security checks. But routinely, they sidled up to me and they stuffed bills in my pocket. One of my most consistent donors was 85-year-old Mary Williams, who bought me plastic baggies full of dimes and still brings them to me now. I give them to the street people who need what Mary has to give. The people of St. Andrews saved my life, says Anne Lamott. When I was at the end of my rope, they tied a knot in it and helped me hang on. They tied a knot and helped me hang on. It's why the church is here. It's why you're here, to tie a knot, to help people hold on, to mediate God's presence to another soul, to love them enough to sit with them in their pain and wrestle with them through the tough questions, to bring them into the presence of a God whose calling card is the transformation of death into life and despair into hope. The people at St. Andrew's Presbyterian practice the spiritual principle of 5, 2, and you. The question is, will we? Prayer takes on different forms, says our friend, the author River Jordan. In the words of the great and wise Robert Foster, she writes, most men pray for power. They pray for the strength to do things. But not enough men pray for love and for the quality to be someone. Prayer can be an offer of a ride on a rainy afternoon to an old woman walking down the road. Prayer can be a cup of coffee to someone standing outside a restaurant with nothing but time. Sometimes prayer is simply just not standing by and doing nothing. I hear the young girl, she says, in front of me lean in and whisper to the server, "How much for just one vegetable?" He offers up the price, and I hear the girl say, "That's the price for just one?" He nods, and she steps out of line and turns to leave, her head hung low. "Hold on," I say, and step out of line and raise my arm as if I'm hailing a cab. She turns around, her hand to her face where she's wiping away tears. "Come here," I say, motioning her with my kindest hurry-up motion. As she approaches, I tell her, "I got this one. Just order lunch." No, it's okay. Really, I say, allow me, I got this. She replies, are you sure? She's a tiny thing wearing camouflage pants and a t-shirt 4 sizes too big. Yeah, I'm sure. The only deal is that you have to get everything. Everything means the true Southern package lunch deal: a meat, 3 vegetables, cornbread, iced tea, the works. Sometimes, River says, the end of the rope is so near the surface of a person's soul, and we never ever know how one more drop of rain might just push a person over the edge into the abyss, or how one word from us, one small offering, one lunch, one prayer, might be the difference that pulls them back from the brink. What's your name, I ask her. Jewel, she says, and she looks down at her plate. Thank you so much, she says. You have no idea how much this means. You just don't know. I've been there, Jewel, I say. Just know someone's praying for you. I have been there, River says. Fact is, I know well how one stranger can help another survive this thing called life. I walk away and leave her to her food, and I don't suggest we eat together because I don't want her thinking that she has to eat with gratitude. Take care, I tell her, wishing her a rich life, and I offer a little silent prayer for her, for the rough spots to be made smooth. One tiny word, one kind deed. How can it matter so much? But it does, time after time after time. Our connection to one another, our need for one another is reaffirmed over and over again. Months later, River concludes, I'm walking down the hall of a local college, and there she is. But Jewel has a different air about her now, as if light travels with her. That day in the line looks like a distant, murky past. Hey, how are you doing, I ask. Hey, she replies. She's all smiles. Things are really good. My grades are great. I'm about to graduate. I'm looking at the difference in her face and how very much alive she is. If I contributed in any small way to the change of events in her life, if that one day helped just get her through a stormy, hungry afternoon, then I have to remind myself that the simplest acts, the tiniest things in an ordinary day, have an impact larger than my understanding, and I must not stop doing them. River Jordan discovered that the key to the Christian life is 5, 2, and you. Here's the money line. We never know how one more drop of rain might push a person over the edge, or how one word, one small offering, one lunch, one prayer might be the difference that pulls them back from the brink. Figuratively, literally, one drop of rain can push somebody over the edge into the abyss. Or one drop of rain can begin the process of a parched plant, making its way back to life. The difference is in your delivery. A drop of rain in the form of a soft word, a gesture of support, an act of kindness is life-giving. But the nagging drip of your criticism, the waterfall of your judgment, worse yet, the silent stream of your indifference, is life-draining. Jesus himself offers his thoughts on one drop of rain, 5, 2, and you theology, when he says in Matthew 13, listen up. The kingdom of heaven is like this. It's like a mustard seed that somebody took and sowed in his field. It's the smallest of all the seeds, but when it's grown, it is the greatest of shrubs. It becomes a tree so big that the birds of the air come and make their nest in its branches. Just in case his listeners have somehow missed the point, he follows it up immediately by saying, here's another word picture. The kingdom of heaven is like a little bit of yeast that a woman took, and she mixed it in with 3 measures of flour, and all of that flour was leavened by that one tiny little lump. If you're paying attention, you can't miss Jesus' point. Little acts, little deeds, little words of kindness and love are never little, ever, in God's economy of things. It's not the big stuff, but the persistent little stuff you do, the mustard seed, the one drop of rain, prayers, words, and deeds that lead us and the people we serve into a deeper relationship with Christ. Hattie Mae Wyatt knew it. Mary Rose McGrady knew it. Anne Lamott knows it. River Jordan knows it. The only way this world changes is when you practice the principle of 5, 2, and you. James Howell is a friend of mine and the pastor at Myers Park United Methodist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in his book entitled Struck from Behind, My Memories of God, he writes these words. A few years back, I traveled to another city to give a talk. After the talk had concluded, a woman who appeared to be in her early 20s ran up to me and just hugged me tight for an almost uncomfortable period of time. I scrambled in my mind trying to recall who she might be. Tearfully, she explained that I had baptized her when she was just 3 weeks old. When she was 15, she sunk into a morbid depression, couldn't get herself out of bed, contemplated suicide. Her parents tried psychiatrists, they tried pills, they tried prayer chains. Nothing availed. Cleaning out a drawer, they stumbled upon a letter that I had written. After I baptize a child, James says, the parents get a letter that I've written for their child with encouragement to keep it and give it to the child once he or she is grown. It's nothing brilliant, just a little message about the meaning of baptism, about the grace of God, that closes with a simple but firm reminder, whatever happens, you are always a beautiful child of God. It's the same form letter generated by a secretary in whatever church I'm serving, written in my first year in ministry, mailed over and over again to people I assume paid little attention, seeing it as more of a keepsake than anything else. Unbelievable as it seemed to me, one of those letters was kept by this young woman's parents, and it was retrieved in desperation. Even more miraculously, she read it, and it struck a chord in her. She got out of bed. She went to school. She kept going to school. She went to college. Now she was engaged to be married. She said to me that day, I came to hear you speak, to say thank you for saving my life. Whatever happens, you are a beautiful child of God, a simple, mundane, ordinary letter filled with kindness, filled with a promise. In that promise for her was the presence that took a hold of her and gave her the strength to take the first step, and then the next, and then the next. One letter sent, one mustard seed shared, one life saved. Don't you ever doubt the power of 5, 2, and you. Give what you can of your money and your time as you covenant for 2024. knowing that it is not simply, not ever, just your time or just your money. You never know how your one word, your one small offering, your one lunch offer, your one prayer might be the difference that pulls someone back from the brink. When you do that, someone will see you walk through the gates of heaven, and they will softly say to you, "Thank you for saving my life." In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.